Is everybody ready?
Let's see. Angelica's ready. What's the over-under? Like, how many minutes? How long do you think she lasts? How far into the show?
Your voice is not nearly as loud as Stephanie's, so I'm going to give it 15 minutes.
Okay. Oh, like the yelling and the... Okay.
Just because we get really...
got it.
We get pretty boisterous quickly.
So you give her 15 to 20?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. And the clock starts now.
Are you ready, listeners? Okay, here we go. What? What is this? What? No, Pussy Riot? Why? Wrong one. Oh, well, welcome to the Ugly Truth. I don't know why I'm playing Pussy Riot right now. That's so weird. What a weird thing to do.
Yeah.
Strange. Fuck the patriarchy.
This is going to be fun for me. I'm so sorry. It's terrible.
It's not, you know what? Here's the deal. And this is all I'll say about it because we're here to provide silly escapism.
True.
But I am a woman in the United States of America. I may not be of childbearing age, but I do have a right to privacy with me and my doctor.
Yeah.
I do have a right to that. And guess what? It's fucking gone. It's fucking gone.
Well, I think that being in California helps a little.
Be prepared, assholes. All I'm saying is it only takes one class to become a lobbyist. I found out. So I'm just saying.
Oh, it's on like Donkey Kong now.
Fucking A. Welcome to the Ugly Truth, though.
Welcome. Ugh.
And the reason that producer Deb is sitting in today is because if you follow me on social media, many of you know that Daryl and I went to Boston about a week ago, and we had quite an adventure.
Oh, my God.
There were highs, there were lows. A lot of lows.
I already know the phrase onion sandwiches is going to be in the title of this episode.
Panic ensued. Chaos.
By the
screaming.
way, for the new peeps, if you didn't know, we're married. So it was okay that we went on this trip together.
Well, yes. We're morally not bankrupt. Whatever. I normally do not like to go on work trips with you because I don't mind being left to my own devices. However, I also really don't hate being on the home front alone.
Yeah.
So I don't mind.
Quiet time at home is not a terrible thing.
I get a lot of shit done when you're not here. But course. I'm like, you know what? I've never been to Boston. And I asked friends and nobody I know has been to Boston. I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to Boston. I, of course, I'm a nervous flyer. And I've heard from other people where they go, oh, you know what? You just haven't flown enough. Once you get used to it, you won't be nervous anymore. And I've heard all of the examples of what a plane is like a piece of candy and Jell-O. It doesn't really,
What?
Yeah.
Who the hell said that?
It's an example of how you're not going to go flying out of the sky. Like you're not going to go careening out down to the ground. There's physics involved and there's just no way. And nothing, my biggest concern is crashing, of course, because I have zero control over my destination, my trip.
Yeah.
That's my biggest problem with flying. It's not really anything else. So anyway, we also decided to do a red eye. And when we were on our way to the airport, you're like, are you excited about going? And I said, no, because something in my bones told me this was not going to be a flawless travel trip. I just don't know why. And
well, you never think they're going to be flawless.
No, that's not true. Sometimes I go, oh, this is going to be wonderful. And I'm like, this is definitely my mind frame. This is not reality. I know that for some reason my anxiety was a little high. It varies. You and I have flown to LA a million times and never had a real issue.
Well, I mean, LA is an hour.
I know, but
5.
It's not the time in the air. It's just the I don't know.
Yeah.
There was something in me that went, this is not going to go great.
Okay.
So I think it's because, frankly, air travel is not good right now.
Well, sure.
There's staffing issues. People are hysterical, and you just never know what you're going to get when you go onto your plane. So I'm thinking, and you and I were like, okay, thank God this is a red eye. We're going to leave at 9:30 at night and we're going to arrive in the morning. Everybody will sleep on the plane. So everybody will be quiet. Yeah. No big deal. We get on the plane and I'm just sizing up everyone because I want to know who are the potential risky people that we're going to be on board with.
Like risky, like what? Like terrorists?
No, like people who are going to be outraged for no reason, right?
Got it.
So you and I, luckily, we had fairly close seats to the front of the plane, which was nice. We had the nice extra legroom, etc. And so in front of us were these two people. He clearly had stolen a hotel pillow.
Oh, that's right. He had a full-size pillow.
With no pillowcase on it.
With no pillowcase.
And then the girl he was
nice
with,
enough to leave that behind, apparently.
Thank goodness. And the girl had her backpack on in front of her like a baby Bjorn.
Yeah.
And she was patting it quite a bit. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, with just my luck, I'm probably going to end up sitting next to this person, or they're going to be behind me or whatever. They were two people. They were 2 rows behind us, but they didn't cause any trouble.
Nope.
And so,
wait, is that the one you said was methy?
Yes. She was just dancing. She was moving around quite a bit.
She was probably on some drugs, but maybe because of the plane. Not
Actually, in my mind, all I was thinking was, hey, you know what? She's probably going home because, I mean, we're going to Boston, so I'm like, she's probably leaving rehab and going home. Good for her. Congratulations. You're clean. I mean, good. I was happy for her.
Backstory. Queen.
I was so happy for her. Yeah, it might have been a backstory, but, her hair was clean and,
there you go.
She was just probably just dealing with the side effects of the nerve damage that comes with meth. I don't know. Anyway, so we get in, we sit down and we settle in. We're like, okay, everything's good. Everything's nice. We were sitting next to a woman with a very strange Lord Farquaad bowl haircut. So then, and of course we had a dog on the flight, and I'm not opposed to animals being on the plane. I don't have an issue. It wasn't a German Shepherd or a St. Bernard. It was a little old buggy Chihuahua. It was fine.
Yeah.
No big. So we're sitting there and it's a full flight. And apparently the people sitting on the opposite side of us in the same row, the girl is horrifically allergic to dogs. And the dog is sitting right behind her on her side. What did I say? 15 minutes?
You didn't even make it.
Jesus Christ, it was 6.
Apparently, I'm being too loud.
Oh, Angelica Pickles. The podcast cat has had enough of my voice. Please pause while we set her free from the rants and raves of a woman.
Cat exiting theme music.
Jeez. Her silent protest has been heard. God.
I barely said anything, so
Jesus.
I'm blaming you.
I took complete responsibility for this. I told you. I gave it 15 minutes and she lasted 6. Jeez, you bitch. Anyway, so we're sitting there minding my own business. I'm playing Pokemon Go, catching Pokemon at the airport, just living my best life. And all of a sudden, this woman, her person that she came on the flight with, was sitting across from her on the aisle seat.
Yep, they both had aisle seats.
Aisle seats. And then the allergic people were next to her friend.
Window and,
the middle. Mm-hmm. And then the dog was behind them. And so anyway, so they're having a conversation. And then suddenly this person out of nowhere, this very large security type looking gentleman shows up because things are feeling a little kinetic, like there's some energy going on. And she turns and she goes, well, they're allergic to the dog that's right behind. And they're like, yes, unfortunately, the dog person was in the emergency row and they're not allowed to be there. So we moved them there. We didn't realize there was an allergy and it's so close. So we'll figure it out. So then the bitch goes,
this is the one next to me.
Well, maybe these two people, and points at us, maybe these two people are willing to trade, just to switch seats.
Oh, lady.
And I'm like, excuse me. And I'm already like, is this going to be recorded? Like, am I going to be on the news?
Do you remember what you said to her specifically?
Yes. So she goes, well, I was just suggesting that these people just simply switch. And I go, whoa, don't include me in your negotiations.
That was exactly.
And she's like, well, I'm just trying to help. And I'm like, stop. And then I turn and I look, and a woman walks on board with a giant acoustic guitar, not in a bag, mind you, free.
Kumbaya.
And I'm like, holy shit. Holy shit. This is going to be the flight from hell. Yeah. I can already tell.
Little did we know.
So unfortunately, some other gentleman was more than happy to switch spots.
They moved some people.
It all worked out. Yep. And then, of course, Miss Priss was like, because I got lippy. So she was a silent arm cross the entire flight. And I'm like, good for you. Leave me the hell alone.
Yeah, by the way, this wasn't even close.
This wasn't even the worst thing that happened.
Airplane experience on the way back.
Anyway.
So the good news is you're not going to hear shitty traveling stories the whole time.
No.
The actual visit during the city, between airport visits, was fantastic.
Well, here's what was great. So we land, we got there like a half an hour early. So we landed at like 5:30 in the morning.
Which felt like 2:30 in the morning.
Kind of. And, I took 3 gummies trying to sleep, and it didn't do anything.
And this was the part of the trip I was actually worried most about, because if we can't check in until 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
that was a thing. That was definitely a thing.
We're fucked because we're exhausted.
So we're flying over Massachusetts.
The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America.
So it's beautiful. The flyover is stunning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a lighthouse. I see all the fishing boats going out. The seas are calm. It's just beautiful. Yeah. And you can see all those,
sun's starting to come up.
It's so lovely. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to have so much fun. I'm so excited to get off this plane, and we're going to have a great time. Yeah. We land. The airport's very small. It's smaller than ours
for a city of that size.
Considering what city it is,
small and old,
it's small and older. And of course, does anybody know of an airport that's not under construction in this country?
So much.
And so we get off. There is a line out the door at the Dunkin' Donuts at the airport, which is hilarious. I'm like, oh, that's right. They do Dunkin' Donuts on the East Coast. I forgot.
Yeah, it's their Starbucks.
So we walk. We get an Uber, and I maintain, for my whole life, that Uber ride from the airport to our hotel was the best Uber ride I've ever had in my life.
I was curious what you get, because he was silent and speedy. So I figured he was your kind of guy.
He drove really, really well. Yeah. He said, hey, good morning. What hotel? And that was the last thing he said. And the last thing I saw him do was give a 5 stars. We were getting out of the car, and I'm like, I love this town. Yeah, this how Uber is? If this is how Uber is in Boston, I'm in.
Yeah, he was flying through the city, and mind you, he's in a big luxury Suburban too.
Like, we did Uber Black.
Yeah, because he was like, whoosh.
It was amazing. Yeah, so we pull up. He's like, all right, bye, and he just takes off. I'm like, oh, I love this city. And so we stayed at the Fairmont. Copley. And the reason I'm only mentioning it is later in the day or later in the week, they were amazing to us. Yeah. We go in, it's barely 6 a.m. The front desk girl isn't even at the desk.
She's behind the counter.
She's in the back office, probably playing Sudoku or Wordle. And I'm starting to feel it. Now I'm starting to get tired. Yeah, now I'm like, okay. Because I barely slept. Yeah, the security guard goes and gets her. She's like, I am so sorry. And so she comes out. She helps us. She's like, we don't really have anything. It's, really early. Obviously, check-in's not till 3. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm starting to calculate the lobby. I'm looking at all the things. Everything is old colonial. So it's very narrow and not snuggly in any way whatsoever. None of the furniture. It's all antique-y. And so finally she goes, oh, actually, I lied. We do have a room available. And I was like, oh, yes. We get in the room. I stripped down, and we slept for like 4 hours.
Oh, we passed out.
And I woke up going, wow.
It was so, that was a good.
Saved us.
Oh, man. So
saved us, because we ended up doing a walking tour, the Freedom Trail walking tour. Yeah. Everybody suggested that we do it.
Even the locals. I asked the locals, expecting it to be like, no, don't do that. It's so touristy. It's so stupid. But they're like, no, it's great. Do it.
So here's what's really funny. Boston is a walking town.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yes. So I'm cool. And I don't mind walking. It was cool. We got to see everything. It was great. There's so much history. Oh, awesome. You do have an idea if you study any form of American history, but it is really just It's a treasure trove of history.
If you've ever done a tour like this in a historic city, basically the guy is dressed up in the garb.
The dude was in period garb.
Yeah, and he's an actual person, like a Nicholas something, yeah, and he had a whole history.
So I fought with George Washington. Blah blah blah. Yeah.
Imagine though, they do these, but they usually do them with little field trips and stuff.
They don't. They rarely.
Instead of this, it was just me and you. We got a private tour.
Well, we didn't know that was unusual, but we're like, yeah, we scheduled a private tour, and so we thought something happened with our reservation. Yeah. And the older gentleman, he's like, who are you looking for?
The guy at the front desk.
Yeah, the front desk guy. And he was super Bostonian. He's like, what you looking for? I can't even do the accent yet, but I'll figure it out.
And after we told him we got a private tour, he goes, how much you pay for that? We told him, he's like, Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And he worked there.
And I was like, holy shit, did we get ripped off? I'm like, is anyone going to show up? I was worried because I'm like, maybe it was a scam or something. No, the guy showed up. There he was. And he was in full period garb. And he's awesome. Just like, normally, I'm doing like 50 children, and this is completely
he had a little
different.
mic and he took the mic off most of the time.
He's like, what's your favorite part? And I'm like, I want to see the cemetery. And he goes, oh, we don't call them cemeteries.
They're
here.
Called burying grounds.
I'm all burying grounds.
And he goes, and I'll tell you why later.
Yeah. we saw the tomb or the grave of Paul Revere and
Sam Adams,
who's a big icon there, and John Hancock, which everyone hates apparently.
Yeah. Well, the Sam Adams one was funny, and I know this is like off topic, but right across from the burying ground, he's right in front, so you can actually see from the street. From the street, you can see his headstone. And across the street is a really old, iconic bar, and they had a sign out front that said, the only bar in the world where you can have a cold Sam Adams while looking at a cold Sam Adams, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, the burying ground was badass.
Oh, that was the best part.
It was so great. Yeah. I was like,
he spent extra time there because he asked you.
Yeah, because I told him I loved it. So he showed me all the different carvings and how people were making it a business back in the day. Yeah. It was kind of like setting up an Etsy shop. They're like, yeah, I do tombstones and I'll just draw this skull for you.
Yeah.
And there were just a variety of horribly drawn skulls.
So basically, I do want to tell the burying ground story.
No, go ahead.
So basically, you can't call it a cemetery if it didn't get blessed. And Puritans didn't do that. And so therefore, it was not a cemetery. It was a burying ground, except for one little hill inside the burying ground. That little part was a cemetery because that was where they buried, in the same spot, mind you, all the babies that died.
All the dead babies go on a hill.
They blessed that part of it. But everybody else had just
regular holes.
Paul Revere's headstone was a solid 8 by 10.
Yeah, it was tiny.
Like inches. Like it was tiny. They put a headstone next to it because nobody could ever find it and they knew he was there. But still. Anyway, I thought it was great. Really, really interesting. He spent extra time there. And I'm glad he asked you what you were most interested in.
That's all I wanted to see.
That was sweet. Good 5-mile round trip.
I felt like 100.
It was
it was fun. And because it was hot.
Yeah, it was actually pretty toasty
hot.
there. Yeah.
Wait till we get to our ugly and awkward moment.
Oh my God.
Because I have one. I had several. Yeah. The gentleman that was giving us the tour actually had an ugly and awkward moment. When we were in the burying ground, aka cemetery area, he was talking and he had taken a drink of water and then he spit all over me.
Oh God.
He spit on my face. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm like, okay. I'm all COVID. I was like, Jesus Christ. And I'm like, normally I would almost throw up right now, but we're in a graveyard and I don't want to throw up on someone's tomb. God. It was nasty, but he apologized and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, thanks, fool. And then, interestingly, we were set to go to
the Red Sox game.
The Red Sox game, which I was very excited about. I know you were very excited about it as well. So I changed and I was all ready to go. We met. I got to meet your coworkers and your associates, and they're all very lovely. I only did one thing that I thought was meh in front of your coworkers. When we were at the bar. And
after we left the game?
No. We were at the bar before we left. We all met up
at our hotel, right?
And everybody is so very nice. Yeah. Very, very nice. And everybody is a good team there. Very good. And so you guys started talking because, of course, the U.S. Open was beginning.
Yeah. So NBA Finals and U.S. Open while we were there.
And all the people were there.
Everybody.
It was very crowded in that city. And so you guys started talking about golf, and I'm just like, I looked at you, and I didn't even hide it. I started rolling my eyes. I was like, oh, God, kill me now.
We were talking about golf in general, but apparently one of the guys that works with us has played this course, and so he started talking about a specific hole, and your eyes, they almost came out of your head. They rolled so hard, and you walked away.
But the problem is I got called out. That's the problem. I got called out, and they're like, "Oh no!" They're like, "Oh God, we ran her off."
Yes, you did.
And so Jesus. I walk over to the two women who are clearly they work together, so they were chatting.
Yeah.
I walk over, I'm like, "Hello," and they're like, "Hi," and I'm like, "Do you guys play golf?"
You just wanted to get that.
And they looked at me like, "Why?" And I said, "Do you?" And I'm like, "Wait," and they're like, "Well, yeah." And I go, "Wait, do you play golf because you love it, or because you're required to because of sales?"
Yeah.
And they're like, them, they were not going to answer me. I'm like, good girl. That's fine. I'm like, please, I'm not reporting back to anyone. You can hate it if you want to. I have no... Stephanie wants to learn how to play so badly, and I just have no interest, but I will do it for her. I'll do it for her. I did tell them, they're like, it's so cool that you get to, watch your husband work because he works from home. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's great. It's great. And I'm like, yeah, I give him criticism, though. And they're like, you do? What do you say? I'm like, well, I tell him that he talks too much and he doesn't listen. They're all, oh, really? That's so cool.
Well, they know.
I'm like, that's great. And I'm like, yeah. And I go, and I've heard all of his parables, of course. The grocery store. They're like, oh my God. And they weren't going, yes, he says it all the time. They were just saying, I can't believe you know that. Because to them, this is new. Yeah. Exciting.
They only heard it a few times. You hear it every day.
Every day. Times. Anyway, it was
sales
great.
Pitch. What do you want me to do?
Everybody was so amazing. I just loved I loved everybody in Boston. They were not one person did I not like. And so we go to Fenway, the iconic Fenway Park. It was great.
So awesome.
It was so great that we actually bought some merch.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you would, because you're a pretty hardcore Giants fan.
Well,
so I didn't know if you would.
I got my workaround was buying a Fenway hat. So it was a Boston hat, but it wasn't like the team hat, like a fan would buy.
Well, our hosts purchased merch for us, which was amazing. That was cool. So you got your Fenway hat through that. And then I purchased the vintage Red Sox logo hat, which I just absolutely have been dying to get one, knowing that we would go. And then
it was everything I wanted it to be. I knew it would be iconic. I knew it would be small.
We had great seats.
We had really good seats. We could stare straight at the Green Monster. Saw somebody hit a home run. It was exciting, for the handful of innings we were there.
What was funny was, so he comes over with all of this merchandise, all these hats, and it was so amazing. We're like, thank you so much. I immediately grabbed one. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just a plus one. I have no business buying one. So I put my choice back and I said, let's let your coworkers and your associates get their hat and then whatever's left. And of course the other woman that was a part of the team we were sitting with took the one I wanted. And I'm like, you know what? She has great taste. Good for her. Good. So all that was left was this teal green Boston hat. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not wearing that. So then we're standing around and we're at this bar afterwards having a great time, and I'm not wearing a hat.
Yep.
And the one girl goes, what's the matter? You don't like the hat?
You got called out again.
And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be getting it. She goes, why? You hate it? You hate it?
They probably said, don't buy that.
Oh my God.
And
I was like,
wear that one.
I'm like, I don't know. It's not. No, you know what? It's not that. It's just that I had my heart set on another one and I was going to buy one, and that's all. Yeah. So we went immediately after that conversation. We must leave now and get this hat.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wonder if how bad do you think they judge me? Like, who's this bitch who won't wear the teal hat? Jesus, it was a gift.
I think it was probably the opposite. They probably tried to talk him out of buying. It was a fine hat, but it's just not baseball.
It was a fine hat.
It was a fine head covering.
Head covering for the East Coast. Anyway, it was amazing. And so then it was time to go home.
Yep.
And we're like, all right.
The next day.
Here we are in our hotel enjoying a little coffee. We're all packed. And I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to go. This was a wonderful thing. I want to live here. I literally want to live here. It felt like home. Yep. And very few towns feel like home.
Especially over there.
And so I'm like, I don't know if it's you and I. We have a lot of generational families that were there before we migrated to the Midwest and then to California. So it's like
ancestors.
A lot of ancestors lived in lived in Massachusetts. We have them in those iconic burying grounds.
Yeah.
But we just didn't have time to look them up. But anyway, we have DNA there. So maybe that, and I've heard that actually is a thing.
It's not a thing.
It is a thing.
It's not a thing.
You should Google it. I'm telling you, it's a thing.
Okay.
It's science. It's science.
It's science.
They say that.
Okay.
So anyway, everything's lovely.
Yeah.
We get to the airport. We have so much time. We're relaxed. We had a wonderful time.
We get TSA pre-check. We cruise through.
We're like, you know what? Let's go get some lunch.
Yeah.
So we go, we sit down, we have lunch, we have a glass of wine.
There's this great Italian restaurant in the airport.
We're recapping our amazing week in Boston going, this is the life. This was amazing. Yeah. I loved everything. And you're like, oh, this is weird. We have a gate change. Oh, okay. Oh, another gate change. Two gate changes from the original gate change as we were sitting at lunch.
We hadn't even been to a gate yet. We just...
no big deal. Whatever. It doesn't matter to me.
JetBlue's got a bunch of gates there.
And it's hours.
Didn't think twice.
We have hours before. So we're like, they're just rearranging, whatever. Yep. And so we're finally like, okay, well, you know what? It's almost 4:00. We board in 45 minutes. We should get going. So we start wandering and we're like, okay. So we're sitting at this gate. It's full. Everybody's waiting. And then suddenly the FAA decides to ground all flights out of Logan International.
Yep.
All of them.
Yep.
All of them.
All from, basically it got backed up. They were saying Boston was because of traffic, meaning there were too many planes trying to get in or trying to leave or parked. But it really had more to do with they were shutting down like DC and New York for thunderstorms.
No one was going in and no one was coming out.
It was a literal plane parking lot outside.
So because of that, there were planes that had landed sitting on the tarmac.
The entire time we were at the gate,
because there were no other, there were no places to put them. So we're like, okay, so there's going to be a delay, but they're going to figure it all out. It's just weather.
Yeah, and by the way, the weather in Boston was fine. It wasn't.
It was fine.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, well, that's weird. 3 hours later. So now we show up, and there's still people. There's people waiting in the gate for a flight that was supposed to leave before us, and they haven't yet because their flight is sitting on the tarmac with people on it. So now there are 3 planefuls full of people at this gate waiting. And then there's a plane full of people.
Three planes full of people waiting outside.
On a tarmac waiting to come in.
Not
and they're sitting on sitting on. I can't even begin to tell you how insane
that would have been the only thing that would have been worse was being, we did do it for a little while.
So I'm like, okay, so at this point, I'm really not thinking anything. I'm just sitting here going, well, they'll work it out. It's just traffic. They'll figure it out, whatever. Yeah. And I don't even really know if I want to get into the characters that were surrounding us, but there were quite a few. I was in people watching heaven, but I was also judging so heavily that I just could not stop. Yeah. I couldn't stop.
First of all, don't be an asshole at an airport.
It's the worst thing to do.
Here's why. They don't care. In fact, they care less when you're an asshole.
They're less likely to assist.
There's nothing literally you can do, and now I don't even want to try to help you, so it doesn't help you. Like the squeaky wheel does not get the
doesn't
oil
do anything
at a airport.
Doesn't do anything. So you and I are just sitting there quietly trying to charge our, because half the fucking chargers weren't working.
And like everything, by the way, usually you find out via text message or the app before even the front desk finds out what the hell's going on. So we know what's going on. Basically, long story short, multiple gate changes. We end up on a plane.
Finally.
At a gate.
4 hours
on
later.
A plane. 4 hours after we were supposed to take off.
And we're all so happy. We're like, oh, thank God. And it was a
nicer plane than we thought. Yeah.
It was so great. Everything was updated. Of course, I came in. I'm like, oh, this is what you were talking about.
Yeah, because exactly.
Because the JetBlue flight over was like a bus.
It was a glorified Southwest plane, old Southwest plane.
But this one was like new and modern, and
it was great.
It was lovely.
Yeah. So we're sitting on this plane, and then we realized that we're not going anywhere. Like we're all boarded, but we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think 30 minutes in, flight attendant comes on and goes,
ladies and gentlemen,
they did not cater this plane. There's no food and water on board, so we have to wait for that. Plus, the ground crew is very behind with all the traffic that's been here, so your luggage isn't on the plane either, so we're going to wait for that as well, but we will get out of here. That's what she says.
Like, all right.
Another hour goes by.
The pilot gets on.
Ladies
and gentlemen,
I regret to tell you that your flight crew has now timed out. We will be in the air and it'll go past our 16 hours that we're allowed to work, which means we cannot take off unless we find you another crew.
We're working on it.
But you're going to have to deplane.
I turned to you and he said, the easiest thing to do is for you to get off the plane. I said, if we get off this plane, they're canceling this flight.
Oh, there's no question. Plus, I mean, it's already like midnight or whatever it is.
It's almost midnight.
It's like 11 o'clock.
It was 11.
And there's no chance they're getting more pilots because this is happening to everybody. So we get off the plane. And so then the flight attendant, as we're walking off, goes, actually, just to be clear, we haven't timed out. The pilots have timed out. So if we could just get some pilots, we can get out of here.
Right. So we're getting out. We're deplaning, and like I said, we had one of the front row seats, and we're like, okay, this is quick.
Yep.
So we got off, and we're walking down the thing.
Jesus Christ.
So these people that have been, this man specifically that's been annoying the fuck out of me for hours is in front of me.
So I got to tell the story on this man really quick.
Okay.
So because you posted on social media and I want to reference what I said earlier in the show.
I will tell you.
Okay. Tell us about this guy, your earlier encounter with this guy, because that's funny.
I didn't have an encounter per se, but they were sitting across from us in the gate.
At the gate, yeah.
And this gentleman could not sit still without putting something in his gaping maw.
Oh my God, he constantly was
eating. If he wasn't eating, he was drinking. It was unbelievable for hours. I mean, I understand, I get it, snack, whatever, but this dude...
He never stopped putting stuff in his mouth and...
Sat down, and we're waiting. And what does this motherfucker do? He pulls out some kind of sandwich that has like triple onions on it. I'm like, that looks like an onion sandwich. And the reek, the odor.
And we're 3 planes deep at this gate, too.
Wafting
by the way.
through the
Sitting
gate.
on the floor.
No one else is eating.
Yeah.
Only this asshole is eating, and he's a pig about it as well, by the way. It's not like he was some kind of, normal-mannered human.
Yeah.
No. Gentleman with the suspenders in aisle 3 at the gate.
He's like that one episode
shoveling it into his mouth.
Like that one episode of Family Guy where where Peter eats all the food and his whole family's skinny or whatever.
And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him and I'm like, this is where you choose this onion sandwich? Where do they sell that?
I think he brought it. Can you get food in?
No.
Probably not. Well, I don't know.
That means he went to and there's not
they
even
should not even sell that shit at an airport.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. But it was
unbelievable.
Terrible.
I'm like, well,
anyway,
I guess when one is under duress, one shovels onions in their mouth and then glugs down Kool-Aid or whatever it was that he was glugging. And here's the kicker. He kept offering it to his family, his thin family.
and he's like,
anyone? And they're like, no. Like they were practically throwing up. They're like, no. They're like, you're embarrassing. I mean, they didn't say it. Their faces said it all. And I'm just like, what? Are you taking this gentleman somewhere to free him into the pasture so that you can be rid of him? Is that why you're going to California?
So
Jesus Christ, I was so livid. I'm like, I hate you. I hate. So then it's time to deplane. And there's more, and I'll tell Stephanie more. But we deplane, and his stupid body is blocking everyone. And of course, I'm directly behind him. And I go, hey, excuse me. And he will not acknowledge me. I'm like, excuse me, sir. And he's like, I can't go anywhere. They're not letting us. I go, bullshit. And I turn, and there's this cart in the way. And so there's this little side road, and I push it. And of course, some hapless teenager skipping along. I almost take him out completely because I pushed it out of the way, and because I'm trying to get to the counter, ticket counter, because I'm like,
all these fools are up there thinking that they're going to find pilots, and we're like, that ain't fucking happening. Get out of our way. So anyway,
we get literally the first people of our flight. And we got the last 2 seats.
The move around the onion sandwich guy definitely paid off because there was over 100 people in line behind us, and we got the last
It was
seat.
Insane.
Yeah, that was a good move by us, or by you specifically, getting around onion sandwich guy. But so now,
Christ.
But the adventure is not over.
Oh, God, no. Oh, hell no.
Because a
canceled flight is marginally fine. I mean, it sucks, but it's like, whatever.
But there's only one, right? So we know that the flight is the next day, so we got to find a place to stay.
So we go down to where our luggage is supposed to come.
Yeah, because we got to wait for that too. By the way, we got to
wait for someone to unload the luggage, and that took almost an hour.
Over an hour.
So we're down there with everybody else, trying to find a hotel.
Mind you, so close to midnight, you can't use any online methods because
we tried for a minute and it was
but if you do, right, because now you're just checking in for the following day
at 3 o'clock.
Right, exactly. So we need a hotel like right now.
So I was looking through my phone the next day and I was looking to see how many phone calls we had made. It was like 25.
Yeah, we called
every hotel in Boston, and every
30
single
miles
time,
away even.
Every single time they answered and I said, we're stuck at the airport. Our flight was canceled. We need a room. We don't care what it is. We don't care if it's a twin bed. We need a bed and a room immediately.
And don't forget, we told you, U.S. Open PGA finals for NBA, Red Sox, all in town.
Same.
No room.
So they're like, we're so sorry.
And that's the other thing. A lot of times when you're calling, you got to call a number that gets to the front desk, not like the 800
So we call and we're like, is there anything? And they're just like, let me check. Like, and they were gasping. They're like, there is literally nothing in this city. Nothing. There's nothing. They're like, I can book you in a room in Salem. And I'm like, that's 30 minutes away from the airport. No, sir. Nobody is going to drive us out there. Yeah. It's almost midnight.
Yeah.
The Celtics just lost. No one's driving us to Salem. No. And so finally we called. The reason that we mentioned that we stayed at the Fairmont is because we called them back and they finally answered the phone because everyone's calling, trying to find a room. And we're like, is there any, we were just there. We just checked out. Do you have a room available? And she said, we have -2 rooms available.
They're oversold. They're trying to find people.
There are people in our lobby that we are trying to find rooms for in this town. And we're struggling. And so we're like, do you have any hints? Any secret clues perhaps of a hotel? And she's like, all right, listen.
She did too.
There is one hotel that has 1 room left. It's a Hilton, but they have it.
Yeah.
I will give you 30 minutes head start.
She did too.
Here's the number. Call.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. And so we did call.
Talk to Andrew and Tanya at the front. Andrew, I mean, they just said their name. They're like, we're holding it for you. Get here as soon as you can.
They're like, well, this is how much it is. We're all, we don't care.
It doesn't matter.
So we get there and we walk in the door and we're all, Andrew? And he's all,
no.
Oh,
we walked up and there was a woman at the counter. I go, are you Tanya? And she looked at me like I was going to serve her.
She literally thought she was in trouble.
Because I didn't talk to her. I talked to him Andrew. On the phone. Yeah.
She's like, maybe?
Like, she didn't want to say who she was. How do you know my name?
But here's the thing. We got the room. Went upstairs.
Great. They were great.
Slept. Barely. I was awake like a few hours later because I'm like, we got to go back to the airport.
But understand that at the airport, they were starting to dole out cots. That's what
there were piles of cots. In fact, when we were leaving, there was a woman there, and there was so many families.
I felt so bad.
Because here's the thing: our flight got canceled. A flight to Florida got canceled.
Puerto Rico flight.
A flight to Puerto Rico was canceled, and there were children weeping because they weren't going to Disneyland. I mean, it was chaos. There was a gentleman screaming at a woman going, where's my luggage? And then this woman who works for the airline or the airport is in the office and she's surrounded by luggage because everybody's dumped their luggage and nobody's come to claim it yet because they're still trying to get their tickets for the next day going to wherever they could. And so she comes out and she goes, this is ghetto as fuck. And I looked at her and I'm like, okay, so this is not normal. And she's like, no.
No. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Bad. It was terrible. I mean, everybody has their version of, but I have, like a lot of people, I mean, being at work, I travel all the time. It's never been that bad. I've had flights canceled, but then you can get on a later one or,
this was crazy.
Or really delayed or something like that. This was next level. And then again, part of the reason it was next level is because everybody was there. So then we get the hotel, we get back to the airport.
The next morning.
So we get there early again.
And that was the thing is when we woke up, I said, we have to go back.
Yeah, especially because
we couldn't get our boarding passes.
Right, because of the way they booked us, we didn't have boarding passes. We didn't have our luggage checked in. We just felt the lines were next level, right?
Well, what was crazy is I told you, I'm like, we're not the only ones who can't print our boarding pass, man. Right. So when we get there, I'm like, there was a long ass line, but it was to drop off luggage. I'm like, okay. So we tried to get our boarding passes, didn't work. And they're like, how do we do this? And they're like, go to this line over here. So we go, okay. Yep. And I go, there's literally only like 7 people in line. Let's go.
Yep.
So we get in line and then 5 minutes later we turn around and the line is like out the door. It was insanely long. And I'm like, I don't know how we got so lucky. We got there 5 hours early.
I was given the flight 50-50, and then I called before we left the hotel to make sure that the seats were in our, because I couldn't get the boarding passes. They were in our, so they confirmed everything. So I felt it pretty good. But honestly, until she reached down and grabbed those boarding passes and the luggage tag off the printer, I was like, oh God, thank you.
I mean, the thing was, it was like the 7 7 layers of hell, and we were working our way out of it. We started at the bottom and we were working our way out. I'm like, okay, phase 7 passed. We got our boarding passes. We got our luggage. Thank the Lord. So now we just have to make sure the plane arrives and is it on time. So we finally, that airport was so fucking crowded that we couldn't find a place to even have a cocktail.
Yeah.
So we finally go to the gate. We sit down. We watch Obi-Wan Kenobi.
On a computer.
On a computer to calm our nerves. And I'll be honest with you, one of my biggest things was we're going to run into all these angry people again. Yeah. And you know what? I forgot. None of them were flying out on Friday. They were all flying out on Saturday.
Yep.
So this was a whole new crew. Yeah. Then there was so like, okay, we're going to board. And I'm like, I can't believe it. We're boarding. I mean... People were surrounding us going, what happened to you last night? We told them, and there were groans. They're like, oh no.
Yeah, because these people had this flight. They didn't change. They had this flight. We were the only ones, us and a couple others.
And so I'm like, oh my God. They're like, that sounds terrible. Because they saw it was on the news. It was everywhere.
It was everywhere.
So they were like, oh my God.
I had to move a client appointment, and the client was in Detroit. And I sent an email going, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to be in the airport all day. I'm not going to be able to make this appointment that we had. And the client goes, oh, we saw it on the news in Detroit. You're good. We'll talk on Monday.
Yeah, it was brutal.
It was everywhere.
It was brutal.
Yeah, in Boston specifically.
So we get on the plane. We sit down. We have a decent human in our row. It was great. And you're like, okay, this is it. We're taking off. We're good. I'm like, it's not over. And you're like, what are you talking about? I'm like...
we were moving, like we're backing out.
He goes, no, we're done. The only thing that can happen is, crash. And I'm like, no, we're not crashing. I go, this isn't over. We're going to divert. so there's no way. And you're like, stop it.
So we get the plane backs out and we're like, oh my God, thank God. And then we get on the tarmac and we're waiting and we're waiting.
We haven't left.
Waiting.
We can't leave.
And we're waiting.
It's like a Twilight Zone.
And so a good 30 minutes goes by.
Ladies and gentlemen.
And we're like moving very slowly. And basically the pilot comes on and he goes, listen, there's a lot of people leaving because of the NBA finals. We're 15th in line. And 15th was after we had been sitting there for half an hour already.
And when you look out the window, you can see
a solid hour, little over an hour on the plane before we actually took off. And then we got in the air and I was like, okay, thank God. And you're like, it's not over. It's not over.
And you're like, no, we're honey, it's fine. We're good. You're just anxious. I'm like, no, it's not over. But anyway, so we're in the plane, 90 minutes to go. 90 minutes to go before we land Sacramento.
The map. I'm watching the map and we're flying toward Utah. And it's a straight, arcing shot. Plane is just pointing right
directly across the country from one to the other.
The giant plane on the screen that makes it look like it's a state big.
And I felt the change. I felt the movement.
Starts to curve a little bit.
And we started descending. I'm like, God, are we
away from Sacramento?
I'm like, God, we're descending already? And so then, ladies and gentlemen.
And you looked at me.
This is the pilot. Like, no. You wouldn't look at me.
I wouldn't. I was like,
you wouldn't look at me. And I go, I told you. And you're like, no. And ladies and gentlemen, this is your pilot speaking. So the winds were particularly high. We're running out of gas and we're not going to make it. So what does he say? We're landing in Salt Lake City.
We're diverting to Salt Lake City to fuel up.
I could believe it, actually.
It was we actually laughed quite a bit about it. We're like, of course.
Everybody did. Everybody did. They were just like, well, of course we are, because why not? Why not? And so everybody's sitting up and they're like, can we at least get a drink out of this? I mean... So we land and they're like, and you can't get off the plane because we're not going to be at the actual airport. We're going to be gassing up.
They're not even getting no gate. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, we're just literally gassing up where all the UPS the FedEx planes are.
Hour and a half.
Yeah.
Hour and a half on the ground.
Finally took off and we landed at midnight.
A little after midnight, yeah.
All these pilots were gathered around the gate.
They couldn't believe it.
And I could hear them going, I have been flying these planes for 6 years, going to JetBlue. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I'm like, okay, so this was an unusually terrible experience.
It was.
And then I'm like, okay, so we finally we got our luggage quickly.
Yeah. And the luggage coming back was about the normal time, 30 minutes or so.
I was traumatized by that event, and I don't even think that I really gave it the real gritty terribleness of this whole thing.
Yeah.
But let me tell you this. All of this was going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I started my period right before we had to check out of the hotel.
Oh, God.
And it was...
We had to check out late because I had to run to the drugstore.
Let me tell you this. I am of a certain age where my period is not regular anymore.
Yeah.
And I truly thought I was day old bred. I mean, truly thought my time had come. I am no longer a woman who can have children. This is it for me. I'm dried up old prune. It's over. Nope. So we're literally walking out the door. I said, you know what? I'm going to pee one more time before we leave. I pee and I'm like, what the fuck is this? No. And I'm like, I didn't bring anything with me because why would I? You ran across Copley Square to the CVS where they had barely any tampons because apparently the United States is having a tampon shortage, which I did not know. So you got what you got. And of course, this was the period from hell.
Yeah.
So it was like a puberty period where it's like constant and heavy and horrible, all while going through this. That whole experience.
And that, by the way, the hotel she's referring to was the first hotel.
Yeah.
So we went through the whole, literally from the time we left the original checkout all the way through getting home.
You know what? It was a sign.
It was.
It was a sign. It was the sign of the blood. That this was going to be horrible. And it was. Yeah. It was absolutely terrible. And you're like, do you still want to move to Boston? I'm like, no, I don't ever want to go back. Never. I hate their airport. I hate JetBlue. And you know what? It's not even JetBlue's fault, really.
Not really. And then, so we're finally driving home. We haven't eaten in 10 hours plus. There's only one place open. It's after midnight. There's only one place open by our house, Mexican place, right? So we go. And of course, 11 cars in line in the drive-thru. We had no options. We had no food at home.
No.
Because, anyway, we're here.
For 2 days when I would go to sleep at night, I was at that airport.
Yeah.
I literally had PTSD.
For sure.
It was so stressful.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that you sent me away during the hotel search.
Yeah.
Because
you took it that way. I didn't really mean it
how would
that
you
way.
say, why don't you go check for our luggage and send me away?
I wasn't doing it to get rid of you.
You did it too. Yes, you were. You even said it. You're like, I can't hear anything.
Well, that's a whole nother story.
And so I'm like, all right, fine. So I'm like, fine.
I didn't send you away like I didn't do it in a. I didn't do it in a like I'm annoyed with you. Go away way.
There was a breakdown. You were under duress.
But that's okay.
And I'm not going to hold it against you forever, but you did send me away.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, fine. Do this on your own, buddy. That's all right. I'll get the luggage. Me. I told you on the plane, I'm like, I'm never going on a work trip with you ever again. I'm clearly bad luck. I'm clearly the angel of death.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, the lobster in the middle of the lobster roll is great, but the bread, beginning and end, the travel was terrible. It was just terrible. But there were some ugly and awkward moments in said trip while we were there, not just in the airport, though.
Yeah, there was.
Boom.
There was.
Yeah. You're having PTSD now, aren't you?
No, not this one, because this is when I was still hopeful and positive and optimistic.
I meant pushing all the buttons you were pushing.
So it was the day we arrived and we did our walking tour. And the thing is with Boston is apparently it was unseasonably warm. We saw a lot of people in very revealing clothing. I was wearing workout leggings and like a Nike pullover long sleeve thing because I was like, I'll probably be cold because, it's a sea town and I don't know. I just thought I'd be cold.
Sure.
It wasn't. I was not cold.
It was unseasonably warm.
It was unseasonably warm. So anyway, I put it on. I'm like, okay, let's go walk and meet our person in colonial garb. And we're going to go on the Freedom Trail. It's going to be great. I'm wearing, I'm not going to get sunburned or anything, whatever. So we're walking. I look adorable. And I'm like, I felt like people were staring at me occasionally, but I didn't really think anything of it because I'm a bit paranoid.
We're walking around with a dude with Patriot gear on.
Yes. So I put my hand on my hip and I'm like, what? And I had noticed that I felt weird, but I didn't think anything of it. And I felt a tag and I'm like, a tag? And I looked down and I'm like, oh my God, I have been wearing my shirt on inside out the entire time. All day on this tour, all over Boston, I'm wearing my shirt on inside out. And here's the thing. I had a tank top underneath, but it wasn't like there was literally no time. Like, he never stopped talking. We never were not walking. Yep. I couldn't go, hold on, please. I need to fix my shirt. It's on inside out.
You never did.
In the middle of everything. Yeah. And it was so crowded everywhere we went.
Yeah, what were you going to do?
Well, and then
it would have been hard to get it off without exposing yourself.
I go when we get home and I tell you, I'm like, I have my shirt on inside out the whole time. And we've been here for like 3 hours. And I've already had an awkward moment. And you're like, I noticed the writing on the back, but I thought that was just like the way it was supposed to look. I'm like, so you saw the tag, but you didn't think for a moment that it wasn't this was like supposed to be this way?
What's funny is when I was editing, I didn't edit last week's show until after we got back because we were posting on Sunday. And in the show, Stephanie goes, "Man, I hope you don't have an awkward moment in Boston." And you're like, I was like, you did. Actually, more than one.
Probably. I don't even remember right now. My mind is so full, but all I know is that it was full of adventure, and we got through it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not gonna lie, it really helps to have a credit card to get you through this, because that is my big sister advice. If you're going on a trip,
have an emergency card,
have a credit card, and be ready, and make sure you have the ability to charge more than you're comfortable with to get a hotel.
Boy,
because you're going to need it. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. So that's my big sister advice to all of you. Hugs. Have a credit card.
Man.
Just do it, ladies and gents, if there's any gentlemen listening. Okay, so before we leave, we completed the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Yeah.
5 stars.
7.
I am not even the biggest Star Wars fan like you. And I very much enjoyed it.
In fact, I may go downstairs and watch it again.
I know.
It's so good.
I always hear you watching them again.
I've never watched a series like that. Like Mandalorian, only 1 or 2 episodes that I watch again. I've watched every one of these episodes more than once.
That, and also we saw the Bob's Burgers movie in the movies, and it was awesome.
It was adorable.
It was so cute, and I loved it. The only thing that bugged me is when we bought the tickets, we thought we were going to be 2 of 4 people. So first of all, because the movie is literally leaving the theater already.
Yeah, it's going to be streaming in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Right. So we go.
We waited too long to see it.
We did wait too long. So that's okay. But they're like, oh, you're in arena, or you're in movie theater 15. We're like, okay, 15 is literally down past the storage rooms. There's it's literally in the bowels of the theater. I'm like, well, this is where movies come to die.
It was like a section of Sears that nobody goes to. It was
so tiny. And so we go inside and we're like, okay, well, it's, whatever. We don't care.
Like 2 people in here. No big deal.
So there's 2 people sitting right next to where we're going to be sitting, because everything's assigned seating now. And I'm just like, and there are these 2 teenagers, and they're like laying all over each other. And I'm like,
yeah, so we sat a couple of seats away from where we actually bought.
Let's just sit over here because no one else is coming. And of course, this woman shows up with her child late. They showed up late.
Mind you, there's 10 total people in this theater.
Yeah, and they
could have sat anywhere.
Absolutely insistent. And she's like, is that E5 and 6? And we're like, yeah, we were just like, there's so few people in here. We just thought we'd give everybody a little space, just, comfortable. And she's like, yeah, but that's E5 and 6. And I'm like, okay.
Anyway.
So now there's 6 people sitting shoulder to shoulder in an empty theater.
It was stupid.
It was so dumb. And the thing is it was a small theater, so there wasn't really anywhere else to go. Yeah, we could have said, you know what, fuck this, and we're going to go down and sit somewhere else. But then there was a whole family down there, and they were laughing really loud because they had a lot of kids. I'm like, well, no, we're sitting.
Movie was good, though.
We're sitting here.
Good story. We're big fans of that Bob's Burgers thing, so it was good for us.
I loved it. 5 stars.
5 stars.
Anyway, all right. Well, that is the podcast. Thanks for listening to our adventures. And Stephanie will be back next week, and we will have much more to discuss, because when we were dealing with our delays, she too was dealing with airline delays.
She was.
At the same time, because of our airline delay. Literally because of our delays.
I can't wait for the special 4th of July episode.
Yeah, the 4th of July episode is going to be interesting.
Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah.
For what you've got planned.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Suspense. Tune in later for more.
Thank you for listening. Bye. Bye.